Hello, everyone. My name is Katherine Kreidler with National Sports Media, and today I have the privilege to interview the 2024 National Sports Media Association Sports Writer of the Year from Pennsylvania, Mike Sielski. Thank you so much for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Catherine. Good to be with you.
First of all, congratulations on winning the award. What was your reaction when you found out?
Pleasantly surprised. It's a great honor. I think the NSMA is a terrific organization. I've been able to go to the conference in years past, and I know Dave. He's a friend, and so yeah, just very surprised and really pleased.
That's awesome. Could you give us a little backstory on to how your interest in sports began and kind of your journey to how you got to where you are now?
Sure. Well, I grew up a big sports fan in the suburbs just outside Philadelphia. I was a fan of the four major pro teams in town: the Eagles, the Phillies, the Sixers, the Flyers.
Hmm.
Followed college basketball pretty closely. And as I made my way through school, both high school and then really in college, I realized that um, I wanted to make sports my career in one way or another, sports media my career in one way or another, and I didn't know what that would look like. I wasn't sure if I wanted to try to be a play-by-play person or work for a team. Or write or something, but I just knew sports was going to be part of it one way or another. And when I got to college, I went to LaSalle University in Philadelphia as an undergrad. I was writing for the student newspaper, and I found that, sorry, excuse me, writing was really where my joy came from. I forget who said it. It might have been Dorothy Parker, the author, but I found out that I hated writing, but I loved having written. I loved the sense of accomplishment that writing something for my student paper covering the teams at LaSalle gave me. I like the feedback I got from people who read it. And, I had been reading the Philadelphia Inquirer every morning, basically my entire life, always reading their sports section. But in college, I really started to dive deeply into what made great sports writing great. And I realized that this is what I wanted to do. So just kind of followed that path as best I could.
That's awesome. So you did the student paper in college. Did you do any like internships?
I did, and this is the difficult part of this question. I'm going to turn 50 in a couple of months,
Okay.
and I'm well aware that the path I took to get to where I am is difficult, if not impossible, for a lot of people who are in the shoes now that I was in when I was in college. So I got an internship at my local daily newspaper, the Intelligencer in Bucks and Montgomery County. It was an unpaid internship the summer between my junior and senior years of college, and I literally got that internship by not by sending an email, not by posting anything on social media, but by typing the same copy of a letter on my roommate's word processor and then mailing it to newspapers around the Philadelphia area. And the
Funny.
Intelligencer was one of a was one of a couple to respond. And then I worked my way up from there. I went to grad school at Columbia,
Okay.
got out of there, came back to the Intelligencer to cover high school sports full time, and really kind of was on my way to working up from one newspaper to the next to the next. And I wish I knew what to say to uh, students and young people who were in your position because it doesn't seem like that formula is necessarily
Hmm.
available to you guys. There's no surefire way or pipeline for getting to where you all want to go and in so many cases deserve to go. And we all know how fraught the business is these days. So anytime I'm asked for career advice, I always kind of hesitate because I know how fortunate I was. I feel like Indiana Jones in one of the Raiders of the Lost Ark movies where the stone wall is descending and Indy kind of rolls underneath it
Yeah.
just before it closes and grabs his hat. That's kind of how I feel. I got underneath before the door closed.
Just in time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that is that's really cool. That's a really funny story of how you got that internship. I really don't think that would work now.
I don't think
Um,
anybody answers their mail now. The idea of
yeah.
of sending letters to everybody just wouldn't go today.
Yeah, exactly. So then after that, what was your first official job? And then did you face like any challenges early on in your career and like how did you overcome them?
Well, my first official full-time job was, as I said, at the Intelligencer, and I
Yeah.
was covering high school sports
Okay.
for a newspaper that had had a circulation of about 50,000.
Hmm.
But it was really kind of um, the nexus of the community. I mean, you have to think back to the late 1990s. I started full time in August of 1998, and we didn't have, for instance, a Saturday newspaper. So if I covered a Friday night football game, most people wouldn't find out the score of that game until they picked up the paper on Sunday morning.
Oh.
But it was so much fun. I was 22, 23 years old. I was covering high school athletes who were
Hmm.
roughly the same age as I was. I at least could identify with them a little bit. Uh, one of the schools I covered was Central Bucks West in Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and at the time, CB West had the best high school football program in Pennsylvania, bar none. When I started covering them, they were in the middle of a state record 59 game winning streak.
Oh my
And
God.
covering them, yeah, and covering them was like covering the Eagles. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd go to a game on Friday night and you just see hundreds of people just kind of walking through town carrying blankets and thermoses
I
and
bet.
wearing black and gold. And I was like, I can't believe this is high school football. And it was so much fun. It was to be part of that community. And what's great about it now is that I live in the Doylestown area, and several of the athletes, whether football, basketball, field hockey, track, several of the athletes who I covered back then are now friends of mine because they're still in the community. And now we're
Hmm.
the same age. We're parents, we're moms and dads, we're neighbors. And it's formed this really great connection. And in terms of challenges, I would just say, uh, it was a great training ground. It was a great place to make mistakes and get feedback from the public and from editors about my mistakes and to learn from them. And I wonder how often that's available to young
Hmm.
people in journalism anymore. The chance to go cover something that, look, high school sports are great, but they're not at the same level of quote unquote importance, let's say, that the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball is. And importance is a relative term, I know. But you can cover it and kind of mess up and go through your growing pains and come out better for it on the other side. And you can learn how hard you have to work to be really good. You got to keep your own stats. You got to figure out how to get a 17-year-old high school student who isn't used to speaking to people publicly to open up about the softball game they just played or the track or the race they just won or something like that. And that was really challenging. And as I said, a really good training ground.
That's awesome. And I can only imagine how like how much fun and how big of a deal those high school games were because Philly sports, it's a different thing.
Yeah.
So I completely believe you. That sounds
Yeah,
really
and it was great. It was a really tight knit community,
hmm.
and I liked that aspect of it
Yeah.
too. I liked going to these games and having people know that I was there to tell the stories of this community, to let everybody know, like, oh, okay, here's this star athlete. Here's what this person is really like, or here's this other athlete on the team who's going through something traumatic or difficult, and I can tell that story. Or here's an issue that is important to the community and ties to high school athletics that I can write a column about or break some news about. I loved all of that, and it's amazing how many people I get today who I bump into on the street or see them in a restaurant or a bookstore or something like that, and they say, "Hi, I remember you from when you
Oh,
wrote about the high schools all those years
yeah.
ago." So it's really neat.
That's awesome. Do you have any like specific stories that you remember that like really mean a lot to you or they're heartfelt or they're special or anything you want to tell?
Sure, I'll give you three. One
Okay.
from that era, and then two more from my time with the Inquirer. So the first one, this story, I think, changed my thinking a little bit about sports writing and the kind of writer and journalist I wanted to be. I did a piece in the year 2000 when I was about 25, And it was a long form narrative piece about a local high school basketball coach whose mother had been murdered
Hmm.
5 years earlier. And
My gosh.
no one in the community, no one in the area knew about this. He had been living in a different part of the state at the time. And then, within the last couple of years had come to our area and was a great guy, great coach, but nobody knew that his mother had been murdered. So I found out about it and I approached him about doing a story and he agreed. And I actually spent 3 days in the town where he and his mother had been living for a while and where his mother had still been living when she was killed. And
Hmm.
I talked to the detective and I talked to people in the community and I talked to the district attorney and I did the kind of deep dive reporting that I really hadn't had a chance to do before. And I
Yeah.
loved it. I love telling that story. I love spending all that time with that story. That was the first, I just cared so much about it. And it turned out, I was really proud of how it turned out. And to kind of tie a bow on that, I, uh, I encountered one of the coach's daughters several years ago, and she now had a corporate position with one of the teams in the Philadelphia market. And she saw me at a game, and she said, I still carry a copy of that story around in my purse.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, which just absolutely floored me. Um,
Yeah.
and so you never know the impact and the effect that you're having on people with what you write or what you talk about, and you have to keep that in mind, I think.
What an
So that's
honor.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really pretty great. So that was one. I did a column in 2014, right around Father's Day,
Okay.
about my older son, whose name is Evan, and he was almost 3 at the time, and he had just been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum.
Hmm.
Now he's come a long, long way since then, and he's doing great. But at the time, it was a tough thing for me and my wife and our family to kind of deal with. And I ended up writing a column about the fact that at the time, Evan was infatuated with the Phillies. He loved the Phillies, even though he wasn't yet 3 years old. He knew all their names, he knew all their numbers, he
Oh.
watched all their games. He pretended he was sliding into home plate on the hardwood floor of our house. And I wrote about how this team that really needed to rebuild and trade its oldest but best known players, guys like Chase Utley and Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard, had, you know, I felt like they had to rebuild and they had to move on from those guys. But at the same time, I was seeing the effect that they were having on my son. And so I wrote
Mhm.
about that juxtaposition about being a columnist and journalist, but being a father and a fan too. Uh, and then the last one I'll say was, and there are others too, but this most recent one, I did a piece. Well, boy, it's hard to pick between these last two. I did a piece in 2023 about mental health issues with athletes,
Mhm.
and I did it through the prism of my cousin who was hit by a train in 2008 and killed. And her mother and father, my aunt and uncle, are like my older brother and sister. They're my god, my uncle's my godfather, and I was very close to her, and I'm very close to her sisters and brothers. And it was all about her struggles with mental health because, we really don't know to this day whether she died because of an accident or whether she was trying to kill herself. And so I wrote about kind of that uncertainty within my family and my cousin's journey and her story and my family's journey and dealing with her death. And that was a really, really important piece, I thought.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing those. Those are really special. Um, so then I guess my follow-up question is, what would you say is the most rewarding part of your job?
I think it gets back to what I said, finding out that people actually do care about what you write and
Hmm.
that you never know who you're reaching with a
Yeah.
column or a story or any of that. I think we can all get caught up in what's going on our phones and what's going on Twitter or social media, and we can feel like that's our entire world or
Hmm.
that is the entire world, and it's not. And you never truly know when you write something about the Eagles Super Bowl victory or when you write something about your cousin who happened to pass away years earlier. who's reading it, and what they're taking out from it. And anytime I find that out or learn that someone has read something I've written and taken something positive out of it, I really feel good about that.
That's amazing. And then finally, do you have any advice for students or young professionals who are looking to have a job or pursue the sports media world? Anything like that?
Yeah, I would say three things. And the first
Hmm.
two are really obvious and really kind of dumb, but they're obvious and dumb because they're so essential.
Hmm.
Number one is read everything. Read, 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 read. Read poetry, read about science, read about politics, read fiction, read nonfiction. Expose yourself to as much as you possibly can. The second thing is write. Writing is like riding a bicycle. The only way to learn how to do it is to do it, and
Hmm.
then keep doing it. One of my favorite one of the favorite my favorite things I've ever heard someone say or read from someone about writing comes from Roger Ebert, who was the longtime film critic. He used to be on TV,
Okay.
won the Pulitzer Prize for film criticism, and he said, when you're sitting down to write, just start. Don't worry about whether the words are right, they'll find you. And when you're finished, if it's not what you hoped for, that's okay. Now you know more about your hopes. And I think
Hmm.
that's a great way to look at the
That's
process of
true.
writing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the third thing I'd say is just open yourself up to everything job wise. I don't know that there's, like I said earlier, a clear path to, oh, I want to be a sports writer at the news website for a major metropolitan region like inquire.com. Here's what you have to do. There is no formula anymore. All you
Hmm.
have to do is produce good work wherever you are able to produce it. So don't close yourself off to working for a team, working for a website, doing anything. You need to be versatile and you need to just get yourself out there. So understand who you want to be and what you want to do, but don't close yourself off to any opportunity that you might encounter to do it.
That's really good advice. I agree with that completely. Well, thank you so much. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Thank you for your time. This is great.
No, it was my pleasure, Catherine. And if I can, you have my email address, and if I can be of any help in any way, I had a lot of people help me along the way, and I like to try to pay it forward. So just reach out
Thank
anytime.
you so much. I really appreciate that.
You
Well,
got it.
congratulations on winning and for the Eagles winning the Super Bowl. That's
Oh,
exciting.
I didn't have anything to do with that.
Oh,
I wasn't
right,
running the tush
right.
push or anything. So
That's funny. Well, thank you so much. It was so nice to get to know you.
you too, Catherine. Thanks.
Thank you.